All right, so now let's figure out how life is organized. And one way we try to organize life is we try to organize it based on similar properties. So, for example, we can start with um, all sorts of things that are kind of multicellular, so big and seem to move. And then we can start to say, well, what's same and what's different? Well, the lancelets, they don't have vertebral columns, so they don't have your spine. All right, and everything else has a spine. So we're going to say that's more different than anything else. And then next up are everything else has jaws. So the lamprey is kind of the next thing we're going to split off. And then fish can't walk, right? You have a particular kind of egg in salamanders that's different from the other ones. All right, and we split off the hair. So we can start to see that we can make a tree of life, which is very much like a family tree that you have, or that maybe you've got in your house, where you've got your siblings that are related to your parents. Their parents are related to their siblings, and you've got cousins over on the other side. So you start to get this relational tree. And in the case of life, historically, this was done by similar characteristics, although now it's done by DNA. All right, so this is our idea. Well, that's all well and good. Well, how big is the tree of life? Well, the tree of life contains three major groups, the bacteria and the archaea. And the bacteria and the archaea are relatively simple. We'll say, well, these guys aren't simple at all because they do all sorts of crazy things. Like they can live on hydrogen sulfide. You can't do that. Some of them can live at 90 or 80 degrees Celsius. You cook at those temperatures. So they can do all sorts of different stuff, but they all are single cellular. Whereas eukaryotes are the multicellular organisms that have nuclei. Now, the thing is, that whole last slide I showed you with all the different kinds of animals on it, well, that's that little pink dot on our tree of life. So us humans tend to be really bad about assuming that big stuff that moves is important. And in fact, it's not the majority of life. What's life? So life is things like Giardia, and these guys have multiple nuclei and all these flagella, so all these sort of tail things that help them move, and they can make you really, really sick if you happen to eat them. They're halophiles, which are salt-loving archaea. They will live in salt water that's many, many times saltier than the ocean. And there's nothing wrong with this lake. It just happens to be that they're pink because they're doing photosynthesis using pink pigments because they're weird that way. Um, so very, very diverse. And then spirochetes is a kind of bacteria, and these are the causative agent of Lyme disease. So if you get bit by a tick that has this particular spirochete living in it and it injects it into you, it can also make you very sick. Not everything makes you sick, but apparently in this example, two of the three do. Well, how do we classify stuff? So our goal right now is going to be to figure out how we go top down and classify stuff. And we're going to classify this cute little dude that lives in the upper left corner of your screen, which you might recognize as a tiger cub, but how would we recognize it as a tiger cub? Well, the first thing you have to ask is it alive? Does it follow those characteristics of life that we talked about earlier? Or is it not alive? And this one's cute, fuzzy, organized, moves, has DNA, reproduces, grows. I'm going with it's alive. All right, so now we're alive. The next question is, which domain is it in? And domain was that break into the three major kinds of life. So bacteria and archaea are single-celled, and this guy looks like he's bigger than a single cell, which makes him eukaryotic. All right, now within eukaryotes, we've got basically four kingdoms, although depending on who you talk to, that number can increase pretty dramatically because protists, the protista, is kind of a catch-all kingdom, and people don't like that one, and it may not really be monophyletic. It may be that there's more differences in protists than we thought there were. In any case, plants tend to be green, have chlorophyll, don't move. Animals tend to move. Fungi, again, they are stationary. They don't have chlorophyll, so they can't get energy from the sun. They also pull energy from their surroundings. Many of them are decomposers, and then the protist is this catch-all single-celled organism category, even though they have nuclei. So which one is our little dude? Oh, good, animal. We divide animals into about 35 different phyla, depending on who's winning the argument of the day. I just put 4 representative ones here. Annelids are the earthworms. Arthropods are the joint-footed ones. I like my little crab spider I found outside one day. And those are spiders and crustaceans and insects. Then we've got the bryozoa. These are multicellular. They're really weird. They've got tentacle mouth. They mostly are aquatic or marine. We picked one up one day at the beach that had washed ashore. It was purple. My mom and I sat there for a while and are going animal, vegetable, or mineral because we couldn't decide if it was alive or plastic. But it turns out it's a bryozoa. There's like 5,000 of them. And then there are the chordates, and the chordates are the animals with a long, hollow neural tube going down their backs. Many of them have spines, though not all. So our little tiger cub there is a chordate. Very good. All right. So, we're going down our characteristics of life. We are classifying. We know he's alive. We know of those 3 domains. He is a eukaryote because he's multicellular and he has nuclei. And he also doesn't have cell walls. We know he's an animal in that kingdom because no cell walls and because he's moving and he's multicellular. Within the animals, we decided he had a spinal column, so he's a chordate. And then within animals, there's all sorts of different animals. There's the sea squirt type animals, and those don't have backbones. And then there's ones that do have backbones, like mammals. And I'm not going to try to pronounce these guys, but we have the shark. We've got the lamprey type things. The lampreys are really cool. They actually will burrow into the sides of fish and sharks, and they're parasites. They're large parasites. And the mammals we know feed their babies milk and are nice and fuzzy. So we're going with our tiger cub is a mammal, right? All right, life's looking good, right? There's only about 5,000 different mammals. We started with like 15 million kinds of life. Now we're down to 5,000 or so mammals. We're doing better. So, and some of these are pretty familiar. We've got the marsupials, and these are the ones that have babies that are very underdeveloped when they're born, and then they go into a pouch, grab onto a nipple, and sort of finish developing. In these pouches. Sounds great because you get to have a baby much earlier, but then you have to haul them around in a pouch anyway. There's the pangolin type ones. I know they look like pine cones, but they do have live births. They nurse their babies, and they're exploited and killed heavily for their scales, which is the same material as your hair and your fingernails, but some people think that it will give you great sexual prowess, so they get killed for their nails. These actually, interestingly, are also potentially implicated as being one of the SARS viruses carrying critters, so possibly involved in creating COVID. Though not the organisms themselves, they may have had some virus in it. There's also some bat theories, and there's some more theories, but all these guys can host viruses. There's also the monotremes. That's the platypus. These guys are really weird because they lay eggs, and these are even poisonous. And now they've figured out they glow under UV light. Totally cool. And then there's the carnivores, the ones that eat meat. So our little tiger cub is a carnivore. All right, life's good, looking good. We've got domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order. All right. Oh, and how many orders were there, just out of curiosity? because we looked at 4, they're 20 or 30 depending on who's counting. Why is there such a distinction? Because some people say, oh, let's split these guys apart because they're more different, and sometimes we'll group them together because they're more similar. But now we're in families. So within carnivores, there's a few families. There's the ones that live in the ocean, and there are things like the walruses and the seals. There's the ring-tailed cats. There's the fossas that live in Madagascar and eat lemurs. And then there's the felidae, which are the kitty cat kind of things. So again, we have a number of different kinds of carnivores, and we group them by similar characteristics. And as every time we're going down, right, we're getting more and more and more similar. So each time we get into a smaller grouping, the organisms within that grouping are more similar. So remember, the kingdom contained all of the animals. The phylum Chordates contained all of those with a spinal cord. The mammals contained the ones that produce milk and have fur. The carnivores are the ones that eat meat. So every time we're going down, we're getting them more and more similar to each other. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order. Now we're in families. So we decided it was in the family Felidae, and then within Felidae, there are a number of genuses, and these genuses, you can be in the Panthera, which are the big cats. These are the ones that can't purr, they growl. We can be in the Neophilus, which is the clouded leopards. We can be in the Felis, which are all the little tiny cats. Or, and actually the cheetahs have their own genus as well. They're very different than the other ones. So we're now in 4 genuses, and which one's our little guy in? He's a Panthera. So within Panthera, there are 5 species. There's a leopard, a lion, a snow leopard, and the panther. There's also Panthera tigris, the tiger. So we're now to the point that we're in one species, which we will talk about the definition of species later in the semester. But basically, this is a population of organisms that's interbreeding with each other. All right. So what we know is that all the Panthera tigrises are more similar in many ways than the Panthera tigrises are to the other Pantheras. Everything that's in the same genus is more similar to each other than it is to things that is in a different genus. So every time we keep going up, we are going with levels of similarity. You do need to know this classification scheme, and it goes, Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti. Domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. Dear King Philip came over for good spaghetti.